Alright, picture this. You're outside reading a good book, taking in the fresh air, just enjoying life.
This is the part where they all die.
When suddenly, somebody or just the will of God decides to assault you with a Game of the Year contender. What's the first thing that crossed your mind?
What?
If you said, say, isn't that the sword from Xenoblade Chronicles and the Whale Titan from Xenoblade Chronicles 2? You'd be correct. It's no secret that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 acts as the convergence point between these two worlds in a physical manner, from the reappearance of certain landmarks to the return of the various races. That arrangement on its own is worth a discussion. However, what I find particularly remarkable is how, whether the people of this world wanted it or not, Aionios embodies both of the virulent characteristics tied to the status of the Bionis and Mechonis, as well as all rest. Those characteristics refer to the overarching systems established within the world by deity or man, promulgated or lost to history. And because Xenoblade Chronicles 3 heavily concerns itself with thematic storytelling, I wanted to focus on that very topic by analyzing how Aionios carries on the legacy of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 in a more spiritual manner, with memes. Yes, we're going to be talking about memes today because the series is full of them. And no, I'm not talking about Reyn hitting the yoinky sploinky or being in the force for 40 seconds. Although typically viewed as a funny image or video spread throughout social media in a modern sense, the term meme originally comes from biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene. Here, he defines it as a replicator, or something that conveys the idea of a unit of cultural transmission, or a unit of imitation. So, essentially, a meme is something, whether that's an idea, thought, song, or so on, that is passed from one person to another directly or indirectly. Let's take this as an example. Whenever you pass by your friend in the hall, you do that dorky yet really cool ocelot hand gesture to the point that they start doing it back. Totally don't do that, by the way. Congratulations, you've just passed a meme to your friend. So, why am I making a distinction between themes and memes if they're both reoccurring devices? Well, it's because a theme in this sense is decided by the authors of a work, those outside the fictional space and how they write the characters. But what about in-universe? Well, oftentimes those themes create familiar situations for characters, and those can be explained canonically as a result of memes, particularly when it comes to connected series where past characters or worlds influence new ones. Why did naming the various settlements colonies survive from the old world of the Bionis and Mechonis to Aionios? Well, as a narrative decision, it was likely to tie together parallels between Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 3 and the theme of struggling to survive. But because the audience is aware of the in-game connections, we can conclude that the naming convention was also passed on in-universe. Thus, we have a meme. We can practically envision memes as in-universe building blocks for themes, which exist outside the story. To best illustrate these parallels, we'll be examining the narrative and thematic blueprints of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, and then 2 to show how these ideas persist into the final entry in the trilogy. The presence of memes will typically surface in this discussion with the topic of the world states and villains. This also means that this video will contain Furana-sized spoilers for the entire trilogy, so I'd suggest no lifing these 60-hour games before watching this. But if you have beaten it, or don't care about spoilers, welcome. And with that, let's turn back the clock to long ago when the world was nothing more than an endless sea cloaked in a boundless sky. In order to understand how Xenoblade Chronicles' thematic presence flows into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, let's break down the established world and systems. The story of the original Xenoblade takes place on the dormant bodies of two colossal titans, the Bionis and Mechonis, who long ago clashed blades in a ferocious battle. Inhabiting and born from these two titans are numerous lifeforms, which include the Hums, Hyentia, and Nopon on the Bionis side of things, and the Machina on the Mechonis front. Yet, what are especially important to this discussion are the souls of the Bionis and Mechonis, Zanza and Mainith. Originally humans turned into deities, the two individuals were both benevolent for quite some time. However, the power-hungry side of Zanza's human form Klaus began to fester within him, leading to a whole chain of events which included his assault on the Mechonis. The decision that we're primarily concerned with is how Zanza decided to perpetuate his existence. Although originally created in what Alvis and Zanza cite as an attempt at friendship, by Zanza's very will, the life of Bionis would be used as his food, fuel that would return to him upon their death. The Homs were certainly aware of the idea of returning life back to the Bionis, as it was a tradition among them, but the true horrifying nature of this practice was lost to time. Of course, Maynif and Egil heavily opposed this system, as did the main party when they learned the truth, as it was inarguably the product of a being who ultimately became concerned with nothing more than his own existence. With that in mind, let's switch over to Aionios to examine how its world is structured. The result of time's flowing halt, Aionios is a bastardized, incomplete merging of its predecessors' worlds. The instigators behind this stop time are simply framed as Mobius, but in reality, it was the very people of the respective worlds as their fears and hesitation gave form to Mobius by means of origin. Regardless, Mobius and the consuls are the manifestation of the people's fear of the unknown and what comes next, which is why they are obsessed with holding on to some aspect of life within the illusory world of Aionios. Jay wants to make a name for himself, and desires to hold on to his loved one. D just wants to continue living a quiet life. This is practically present in every console. Yet, in order to remain in the Endless Now, they need to guarantee the world order is not questioned. The reasoning acts as a flowchart of sorts. If the people of Aionios don't question the world, they continue the fight. If they continue the fight, they produce corpses to fill up the flame clocks. If they fill up the flame clocks, they provide energy for Mobius, or, as Tyon says, fuel. So basically, the death of the world's inhabitants unknowingly provides fuel to the deity-like beings who are obsessed with control and living in the now. Huh. Where have I heard that before? Mobius, in a lot of ways, inherited the meme of Zanza. According to Dawkins, imitation, in the broad sense, is how memes can replicate. So by abusing the systems of the world to selfishly pursue their objectives, they are following in the Mad God's footsteps. In an effort to accomplish that goal of total control, knowledge of the world's systematic structure is diluted, extinguished personally, or those who possess said knowledge are converted. To cite George Orwell's 1984, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Additionally, Zanza's disciples are much like consoles B through Y, keeping people on the path selected by Zanza or Zed. And, at the end of it all, these very systems serve as the mold to shape both of the respective parties as well as their desire to defy history and free the world from the shackles of the ones who crafted them, which can be seen in the final encounter with Zanza and Zed. It's by these very villains that Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 3's shared themes of moving forward despite a fear of the unknown materialize and connect within the trilogy. Nonetheless, these concepts of withheld knowledge and limited freedom aren't merely limited to gods, however, as they also come from mortals themselves. The world of Allrest, populated by numerous titans moving afloat the Cloud Sea around the World Tree, is the setting for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and similar to the world of the Bionis and Mechonis, a product of a world's destruction. Built upon the ruinous foundation of Klaus's original world after his experiment, the core of Allrest was built by a remorseful Klaus known as the Architect, in an attempt to replace what once was. The existence of life in many shapes and forms, the use of particles as a building block for life, it's all there, but in a different form. However, the state of Allrest isn't wholly molded in the manner it is because of the scientist. That honor is held by the Praetor of Indel, Amalthus. What makes Amalthus so interesting as a villain is how he hasn't changed due to the actions of a major character, but rather inaction. He is very much a product of how the worlds were allowed to develop. Klaus, regretful of his action, now takes a passive stance, which allows Allrest to evolve into the same world populated by power struggles that it was before the experiment. For Amalthus, the death of his mother was the initial act that left him jaded toward humanity, but it was the endless exposure to the wanton death and destruction caused even by those who had been shown mercy that continued to build upon that foundation of resentment. Eventually, Amalthus went to seek answers for himself, coming back with what he believed to be a gift from the Architect, the core crystals of the Aegis's Pneuma and Logos. Unbeknownst to him, that buried malice would influence the Aegis he resonated with, and open up a path for him to pursue his desires as he believed it was a divine right bestowed upon him. Amalthus would climb the ranks of the Indeline hierarchy and wipe out any individuals who might be able to challenge his authority through the spread of knowledge. Just like with Zanza, Amalthus controls the very flow of his respective universe, and his ideals influence the dreams of the party, inspiring them to defy the established world order. What I also believe is more than a coincidence is that Amalthus does use the people of the world upon death as a source of fuel, or perhaps more properly as a way to sustain himself. Amalphus, despite being over 500 years old, is remarkably young for his age, something the party questions several times. This is likely as a result of his existence as a Blade Eater, sharing a part of Haze's core crystal, and the core cleansing process, which has allowed for him to steal the cores from numerous blades. Not only has it purely led to the physical benefit of Amalphus, but also the fulfillment of his desires. Amalphus wants to see the world die, but not with a bang. Rather, as a slow, steady whimper due to his hatred of humanity, where the Titans die off and provide people no place to live. In a way, echoing the inaction of Klaus to step in and rectify the world. Although the Praetorium and Amalphus by extension controlled the systems in the world from the warring nations to the provision of cores, he's been holding the status quo for centuries, putting the world in the proper position to bleed out. Since Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 occur at the same time, the exchange of memes between characters isn't as simple. Sure, Amalphus and Zanza both strive for control, but it's not an imitation of each other due to a disconnect. Yet, where did they originally get the idea of control from? That would be the link between these two universes. Mankind. We see the meme of humanity's cruelty and lust for power remain a constant no matter the universe, giving shape to several themes of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which include discovering one's own path in life and finding a way forward. These story beats revolving around carving one's path into the future are a constant among all three titles, with slight variations. What I personally would consider the central theme of this trilogy. Getting back on track, Amalphus' decision to let the world die off might not seem similar to how the consoles carry out orders in Ionios, but it actually is. Xenoblade Chronicles 3's annihilation effects, essentially the result of two worlds finally joining within the botched merge that is Ionios, chip away at the world slowly and remove hospitable places just like the death of all rest Titans do. Ironically though, Amalphus preferred that the world did not go out with a bang, and Ionios is slowly dying off due to a bunch of bangs. Huh, how about that? But no matter what game we're examining, one variable remains consistent across each universe, and that is humanity. Despite the intangible existence that Mobius was born from, Mobius at its core is a sentient expression of human sentiment and weakness. I brought up how people become Mobius via their strong desire to continue doing or holding on to something they cherish. That by itself is human enough, but I want to examine the creation of Mobius in the context of this line.
As for the one, it's because it amuses me.
The staging of Zed's residence as a theater, a house built for the telling of dramatic stories and the entertainment of others, and the original Mobius born from human desires. This all makes sense when you put that into the perspective of humans who honestly take pleasure in the struggles and drama involving others. When examining media, people can thoroughly enjoy characters for a multitude of reasons, whether that's because they resonate with the goals, personality, or identity of a character, or because they hold significant entertainment value, even if that character is despicable. For example, Berserk's Griffith is a deplorable character who has committed disgusting actions, and yet he's one of my favorite characters in the story. That doesn't mean I condone his actions, but that it creates an engaging premise for a narrative and obstacles for our heroes to overcome. This is an incredibly surface-level description of Griffith, but I'm able to enjoy the character despite recognizing the issues, primarily because I understand the barrier between fiction and reality. But what about reality? This discussion about human nature could expand into numerous facets, but let's contain it to the YouTube sphere. Drama channels that prey on recent news dealing with conflicts or struggles of others occupy a space on the platform and garner massive amounts of views. Why? Well, a lot of people are enamored by the potential story. They're curious to gather information, see how it plays out just like they would for a character in a book, even if they don't know the people involved in the drama. Additionally, the audience observing the drama has no requirement to become directly involved, so they can live vicariously through the situation and reap the so-called benefits. So here we have Zed and the other Mobius, people that gain entertainment and nourishment through the troubles others are experiencing, without fully understanding the difficulties of those participants since they don't have to be directly involved. This is what makes Mobius so human. Alright, before moving forward, let's briefly summarize everything we've discussed so far. The humanity both within or around Zanza and Amalthus have impacted them to pursue agendas involving control and the use of denizens of their respective worlds as a fuel source to keep themselves alive. These decisions in turn not only impacted the main parties, inspiring them to pursue their own goals that epitomize the themes of their respective games, but their actions subconsciously influenced the structure of Aionios through the survival of their memes. Now, all the pieces of the puzzle come together to depict something I'd consider rather ironic. Xenoblade Chronicles ends on a happy, optimistic note where Shulk and Alvis believe that the people of this new world will walk together hand in hand. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has its cast flying into the unknown, but hopeful as they see a new world forming. Pyra and Mithra are reunited with Rex in the ending of the game, which matches the lyrics of the final song that plays, One Last You. For instance, these lines. This desire to cling to who or what you are familiar with or emotionally attached to is the exact same mentality that spurs on the people of these worlds and led to the creation of Mobius and Aionios. There's something really human about the main party, the heroes of this journey, succumbing to the same weakness that ordinary people do. When I originally thought up this section, I didn't have the fondest feelings toward what this all represents. Yes, the legacy of the original game survives, but I felt the very concept of continuation diminished the conclusion to the previous titles, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in particular. And while I'm still conflicted on it, I believe the sentiments expressed via One Last You's lyrics give credence to the decision they made about the fate of these two worlds. So, I think this is the best way to put it. I now believe how it would be logical for Aionios to form based on human nature and the reservations that exist within everyone. The series has showcased a great understanding of both the good and bad qualities of humankind in each of the titles through the utilization of themes constructed through inherited memes. However, I also have reservations of my own. I guess to take it from the game itself, I wanted to live in the endless now that was Xenoblade Chronicles 1 being the end. And although it wasn't by my hand that the story should continue, it's happened and I can't change that. If that's not poetic, I don't know what is. Although Xenoblade Chronicles 3 heavily advertises its connection to the series' past by means of similar landmarks and iconography, the game uses its high thematic focus to strengthen its positioning and justify its existence within the trilogy. The memes of humanity infecting Zanza and Amalthus who would then pass their desires onto the wills of Mobius is something I find to be extremely compelling, and gives both Aionios and Mobius more weight. These memes are also responsible for the development of the implanted themes of moving forward despite what troubles plague you, whether they are a result of someone else's actions or self-imposed. At the end of the day, there's no guarantee that this was Tetsuya Takahashi's vision for Xenoblade Chronicles 3. However, I believe the seeds are there. Volume 6 of Ask the Developer features Tetsuya Takahashi, Ko Kojima, and Genki Yokota discussing numerous aspects of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but what is relevant to this discussion is Takahashi's portion on themes. He discusses topics like the consistent theme of foreign objects across the series, but it's this excerpt that's especially relevant. This title brings together all the themes that have been developed over the past 15 years since 2007, when development of the first title and the Xenoblade Chronicles series began. So, by culmination, you don't mean that it brings closure to the series, but rather that it rounds out the trilogy thematically. Yes, that's right. I guess you could say that it is like a summary for moving on to the next step in the future. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is still incredibly fresh and ripe for analysis, and the DLC story hasn't even come out, which means it's hard to pinpoint exactly what this next step might be, especially in a future that is less reliant on the foundation of Xenogears Perfect works that Takahashi has been referring to for over 20 years. Yet, Takahashi has confirmed these games were meant to be thematically resonant, and I think it'd be pretty sound to conclude it was under the umbrella of looking to the future and carving one's path. If that means moving to a new universe bereft of the Conduit and Klaus, then some of the memes imitated from Zanza and Amalthus would have met their end. All except for one. the one that started it all. Humanity. Hello everyone, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you making it to the end of this video. I apologize that it's been a while since my last analysis. I honestly took a little bit of a step back from YouTube to focus on myself, as it was kind of wearing away at me along with all the other things going on in life, so I just needed to relax and step back and kind of focus on myself. But thank you for being patient, I really appreciate it. As always, if you did enjoy this video and would like to leave a like or subscribe, it is greatly appreciated. We're getting very close to 15,000, and I'd love to see if we could try and hit that before the end of the year. I have a couple other ideas thought out here, some Xenoblade free, some not Xenoblade free, and I can't really guarantee an order, so you might just have to stay tuned. Like, on my Twitter, I'll probably post updates if you follow me there. But aside from that, thank you all again so much for all the support and watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time.